we're realizing MBS does care what the elites in this country think, and boy, have the elites turned against him big time.
After emboldening him.
Except for the investment community.
Well, we'll see how they react in the next couple of days. Let me turn to the president here because he does seem to be, well, let me put it with Andrew Sullivan, no Donald Trump defender. Yeah. Here's what he writes. Trump's record as a force of destruction is profound. But as the months tick by, there's a decent case that Trump's proactive accomplishments are beginning to add up as well. A huge tax cut, 2 Supreme Court justices, wholesale deregulation, renegotiation of NAFTA, isolation of Iran, and a broader reboot of bilateral nationalism on the world stage. Lonnie Chen?
Well, this was always the essence of the Trump argument, particularly to Republicans who are a little bit hesitant about it. Whether you like me or not, I'm going to get these things done that you care about. And particularly in these Senate races around the country, we are seeing how that is animating itself, right? Particularly with respect to the Supreme Court fight. And what the Kavanaugh nomination fight did was to remind Republicans of just how important that central promise was, to nominate Supreme Court justices who would uphold certain views of the Constitution. And I think the president is now coming back to that. He's nationalizing this race, and I think that's benefiting the Republicans in some of these key Senate races.
He feels really good right now,
Yes,
and you can see it. And part of it is all of these accomplishments that he feels like he's been racking up, from the trade deal with Canada and Mexico to the way the economy, 3.7% unemployment, but also the Mueller investigation has not been front and center. You don't have Stormy Daniels front and center and things like that. And so that really makes him feel really good. He loves being out on the campaign trail. We're told he's going to do 4 to 5 rallies a week from now until the election. He's got a 3-day swing in the western part of the U.S. coming up this week. And so he also feels like he's his best messenger. And
Montana,
so he won't stop talking.
Montana, Nevada, Arizona is where he's headed next.
Yeah, no, I was at 2 of his rallies this week in Iowa and in Pennsylvania. He gets a charge out of the crowd. The crowd loves him. There are thousands of people there. There are people outside waiting to get in. But that can be ephemeral. That can also be illusionary to any president, as we know. Look back at President Bush. Look back at President Clinton. Look back at President Obama. They had big crowds during midterm elections. They were not on the ballot, and they lost big seats in those elections. So this doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it does pump him up. And he's no longer in that sort of restrained, kind of like things are going to go bad mode, and he's on the offense rather than the defense.
And you see it with him talking to the press. I mean, he's unleashed. His own communications chief, his own chief of staff right now.
By the way, while you talk, I have a scroll here of all the stuff he's done over the last week. I mean, it is amazing. He's like, if there's a camera, he's going to make sure he's in front of it.
This is really Trump being Trump. You can see how much he loves being out at the rallies. He's having these primetime rallies, even though everyone isn't covering them and carrying them live as they had in the past. And he misspeaks, but fact-checking him doesn't seem to have any penetration. This is a man who is really enjoying being president, and you can see it.
Well,
and
he's enjoying being the president that he's created.
That he has created. It doesn't mean doing briefings, reading, or doing hard things, but he's also going to claim credit, is claiming credit for Korea, which is not a success, but this is part of his.
All right, guys, I'm going to pause it here. We're going to be back in a moment. We're going to actually talk to 2 people who have to win votes in 3 weeks. Democrat Stacey Abrams, who hopes to become Georgia's next governor, and Republican Josh Hawley, who's running to unseat Claire McCaskill as a senator from Missouri.
Not long ago, Rhonda started here. And then more jobs began to appear. These techs in a lab, this builder in a hard hat, the welders and electricians who do all of that. The diner staffed up because they all needed lunch. Teachers, doctors, jobs grew a bunch. What started with one job spread all around, because each job in energy creates many more in this town. Energy lives here.
That's what we call a huge drag. Seriously, that's what we call it officially. And we covered it. Talk to farmers. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Your mornings were made for better things than rheumatoid arthritis. Before you and your rheumatologist move to another treatment, ask if Xeljanz XR is right for you. Xeljanz XR is a once-daily pill for adults with moderate to severe RA for whom methotrexate did not work well enough. It can reduce pain, swelling, and further joint damage, even without methotrexate. Xeljanz XR can lower your ability to fight infections, including tuberculosis. Serious, sometimes fatal infections, lymphoma, and other cancers have happened. Don't start Xeljanz XR if you have an infection, tears in the stomach or intestines, low blood cell counts, and higher liver tests and cholesterol levels have happened. Your doctor should perform blood tests before you start and while taking Xeljanz XR and monitor certain liver tests. Tell your doctor if you are in a region where fungal infections are common and if you have had TB, hepatitis B or C, or are prone to infections. Don't let another morning go by without talking to your rheumatologist about Xeljanz XR.
All money managers might seem the same, but some give their clients cookie-cutter portfolios. Fisher Investments tailors portfolios to your goals and needs. Some only call when they have something to sell. Fisher calls regularly, so you stay informed. And while some advisors are happy to earn commissions whether you do well or not, Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when you do better. Maybe that's why most of our clients come from other money managers. Fisher Investments, clearly better money management.
A look inside the secretive world of North Korea.
This storm has touched virtually every corner in the state.
No signs of backing down.
911 received about 1,100 calls.
Welcome back. There are 35 Senate seats in play in this year's midterms, including 27 seats held or controlled by the Democrats and 9 by the Republicans. And Republicans hope to use this very friendly map to increase their narrow 51-49 majority. Meanwhile, the numbers are pretty much reversed in governor's races. There are 26 Republican seats up, along with just 9 Democratic and 1 independent. And Democrats are the ones bullish about their prospects on that side of the ledger. So we wanted to talk to some of the challengers in these races, and we have 2 with us this morning. Stacey Abrams is the Democratic candidate for governor in Georgia, and Republican Josh Hawley is challenging Claire McCaskill for her Senate seat in Missouri. Both candidates join me, and we're going to begin with Josh Hawley in Columbia, Missouri. Mr. Attorney General, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let me ask the question about your race this way. If you win, is it fair to say the number one issue on voters' minds was judges and Justice Kavanaugh? And if you come up short and Senator McCaskill wins re-election, is it fair to say the number one issue on voters' minds was health care? Is it fair to say that you both have 2 different views of what the most important issue is to Missourians?
Well, I do think we have different views, Chuck, and I do think that the debacle with Justice Kavanaugh, what the Senate Democrats did in that case, is hugely motivating to Missouri voters. They cannot believe the conduct of these Senate Democrats. They can't believe the smear campaign that they launched. And by the way, how they drug Dr. Ford through the mud as well. And now this mob behavior that we're seeing all over the country, it is motivating folks. But of course, on health care as well, Missourians are paying outrageous health care costs, up 145% price increases in this state. They want to see that change. Claire McCaskill is responsible.
Let me ask you this. If you get elected, are you going to vote to repeal and replace Obamacare?
Yes, I would. I think it's absolutely vital that we get rid of the failures of Obamacare. We bring down costs. We protect people with pre-existing conditions in the law with a mandate, Chuck, that ensures that we do it, but that we multiply options for families. I've had family after family in this state come up to me and say, look, we can't afford our health insurance. We're having to get a second job, send a spouse back to work. It shouldn't have to be that way. It is that way because of Senator McCaskill.
But as you know, if you get rid of this law, you also get rid of the protection on pre-existing conditions. I know that you believe it can be passed, but frankly, it never has been, as you know. In your lawsuit as Attorney General you filed, you could have severed the issue of pre-existing conditions. How do you plan on protecting pre-existing conditions?
Chuck, I think that we can do, there are a number of ways to do it. To protect folks with pre-existing conditions, Congress should mandate it. My position is insurance companies should be required by law to protect folks with pre-existing conditions. My own son, I've got 2 little boys at home.
Do you think that's constitutional, by the way?
I do. Oh, yeah, I do. Absolutely. I do. What's not constitutional is the requirement that people buy health insurance they don't want. But it's absolutely constitutional to say that insurers have to cover people with pre-existing conditions. Congress should mandate it. People like my own little boy who has a pre-existing condition should be covered under the law, but apart from Obamacare. We don't have to have Obamacare to do it. And that's the big difference here. Claire McCaskill wants to protect Obamacare with any condition, by any means necessary. I think we need to clear away the failure of Obamacare and put patients back in charge of their health care.
All right, final question for you. We found a clip of a TV ad you ran when you were running for Attorney General in 2016. Here's what you said in that ad.
Jefferson City is full of career politicians just climbing the ladder, using one office to get another. I'm Josh Hawley. I think you deserve better.
You, within 2 years, immediately ran for the U.S. Senate. What would you say to yourself in that ad?
I would say that the future of our country is at stake. And I would say you can see it with the hearings of Justice Kavanaugh. You can see it in what we're seeing out on the streets now. The future of this country and our way of life here is at stake. And it's incumbent upon all of us to do all that we can. I'm trying to do my part to make sure that we fight for the future of this country and fight for Missouri. Claire McCaskill has not, but I will.
All right. Josh Hawley, Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate in Missouri. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your views. Be safe on the campaign trail, will you?
Thank you so much. Thanks, Chuck.
You got it. Thank you. And joining me now from Atlanta is Stacey Abrams. Welcome to Meet the Press.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start with the impact of Hurricane Michael, particularly on southwest Georgia. I know your opponent is going to be touring the area this week in his capacity as Secretary of State, he says, to see how local officials are going to be able to see if they can handle the start of early voting tomorrow. Let me ask you, what do you know about the area, how things are going? Are they ready to be worrying about early voting yet, or do they need to be worrying about getting the power on?
I think it's going to be a combination. Areas like Albany or Glasgow County, Terrell, and parts of southwest Georgia were very strongly devastated. I know that Georgia Power and the EMCs are doing the best they can to turn power back on and deliver it to as many people as possible. But luckily, early voting allows for major centers to accept votes, and I hope that the priority will be, in terms of voting, making sure that those places are ready. But I know all of our hearts are reaching out to everyone in those areas. I've gone through a hurricane. It's a devastating process, and it takes months for recovery to happen. But I think that the governor and the state leaders have done a great job of responding very quickly.
I'm curious, what's your message to residents of the area? You could be the governor you could be elected governor in a couple weeks. Suddenly, the task of rebuilding this part of Georgia is on your to-do list. What's your message to those voters of why you would be better prepared to lead the recovery than your opponent?
Number one, I've been through this myself. I understand that it's not just the physical plant that's a problem. It's making sure that people have access to the resources they need. And often when the cameras turn off and when people go home and stop volunteering, that's when the real trouble starts. When people who have been unemployed are continuing to try to figure out how they can make a living and take care of their families. And so I will leverage the responsibility of the governor, the ability to connect with state and local officials and federal officials to make certain that resources don't just end when the memory of the storm passes for the average person. And I think